Robert sat in his corner office on the 42nd floor, staring at the city lights below. It was almost 9 in the evening, and everyone else had gone home hours ago. The silence was deafening. He loosened his tie and leaned back in his leather chair, wondering when his life had become so empty. His phone buzzed. It was his younger sister, Lisa, calling for the third time that week. He considered letting it go to voicemail, but she'd just keep calling. "You need to get out of that office," Lisa said the moment he answered. "No hello, no small talk. That was Lisa for you." "I'm working on the quarterly reports," Robert replied, though he'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for the past hour without actually seeing it. "It's Friday night. Rob, you're 38 years old, running a company worth hundreds of millions, and you're spending another weekend alone in your office. This isn't healthy." Robert rubbed his eyes. "I'm fine, Lisa, really." "No, you're not. When was the last time you went on a date? When was the last time you did anything that wasn't work-related?" He couldn't remember. The truth was, he'd stopped trying years ago. Every relationship ended the same way. Women either wanted him for his money or got tired of coming second to his company. It was easier to just focus on work. "I have a friend," Lisa continued. "She's amazing. Kind, funny, successful in her own right. I think you two would really hit it off." "Lisa, I don't need you setting me up on blind dates." "Yes, you do. Come on, Rob, one date. If it's terrible, I'll never bother you again." I promise that was a lie, and they both knew it. But something in Lisa's voice made him pause. She genuinely sounded worried about him. Maybe she had a point. Maybe he had let his life become too small, too focused on profit margins and board meetings. "Fine," he heard himself say. "One date," Lisa squealed with excitement. "Really? Oh, this is perfect. Her name is Catherine. I'll set it up for tomorrow night. Antonio's restaurant at 7. Don't be late, and please, for the love of everything, don't talk about work the entire time." After hanging up, Robert wondered what he'd just agreed to. He hadn't been on a proper date in almost 3 years. What do people even talk about on dates? He'd become so used to business dinners and networking events that the idea of casual conversation with a stranger felt foreign. The next evening, Robert stood in front of his closet, second-guessing every outfit choice. Too formal? Too casual? He finally settled on dark jeans and a nice button-down shirt. His housekeeper, Rosa, who'd been with him for 10 years, actually gasped when she saw him. "Mr. Robert, you look very handsome." "Special occasion?" "Blind date," he admitted, feeling like a teenager. Rosa beamed. "That's wonderful. It's about time. You work too much. A man needs more than just work in his life." Everyone seemed to have an opinion about his personal life lately, or rather, his lack of one. He arrived at Antonio's 15 minutes early. The restaurant was one of those expensive Italian places with soft lighting and intimate tables. The kind of place where you could actually hear the person across from you speak. Robert chose a table near the window and immediately regretted it. Too exposed. He moved to a booth in the corner. Better. A waiter appeared with the wine list. Robert ordered a bottle of red, then changed his mind and made it just a glass. He didn't want to look like he needed alcohol to get through this. Though honestly, he kind of did. 6:45. 15 minutes to go. He checked his phone, deleted some emails, then put it away. Lisa's voice echoed in his head. "Don't talk about work." What else was there? He realized with some horror that work was basically his entire life. He had no hobbies, no interesting stories about travel or adventures. His last vacation had been 4 years ago, and even then he'd spent most of it on conference calls. 7 o'clock came and went. Robert tried not to feel relieved. Maybe she'd changed her mind. Maybe this was a sign that he should just go home and accept that he was meant to be alone. Some people were better off that way. At 7:05, the restaurant door opened. A woman walked in, looking around uncertainly. She was tall, with dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, wearing a blue dress that was elegant without trying too hard. The hostess pointed in his direction. As she walked toward his table, Robert's wine glass stopped halfway to his mouth. The room seemed to tilt slightly. His heart started hammering in his chest in a way that had nothing to do with nervousness and everything to do with recognition. It couldn't be. The woman stopped 3 feet from his table, her eyes going wide. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Rob," she whispered. "Katie." The nickname came out automatically, one he hadn't spoken in 20 years. Catherine Morrison. Katie, his high school girlfriend. The girl he'd loved more than anything when he was 17. The girl he'd planned his entire future around before college, pulled them to different states and life got in the way. They stood there, frozen, staring at each other like two people who'd seen a ghost. The restaurant noise faded into background static. I had no idea, Katie said finally. Lisa just said her brother. She's been calling you Robert in her stories, and I didn't make the connection. Robert's mind was racing. Lisa had used Katie's married name, Coleman, when she'd told him about her friend. He'd never thought to ask questions. Never imagined in a million years that this would happen. This is insane, he managed to say. Katie laughed, a nervous sound that he remembered from 2 decades ago. That's one word for it. Do you want to sit? Or we could. I don't know. This is weird, right? This is really weird. It's definitely weird, Katie agreed, but she was already sliding into the booth across from him. But I'm here now, and honestly, leaving would be even weirder. The waiter appeared with perfect timing, breaking the tension. Katie ordered wine with slightly shaking hands. Robert noticed she wasn't wearing a wedding ring. Lisa had mentioned something about her friend being divorced, but he hadn't been paying attention to the details. So, Katie said once the waiter left. 20 years? 20 years, Robert repeated. You look great. You look like you own the world. She said it with a slight smile, but there was something in her voice he couldn't quite read. Lisa's told me about your company. Very impressive. What about you? Lisa said you're a nurse? Katie nodded. Pediatric nurse at County General. Have been for 12 years now. That's amazing. You always were good with kids. He remembered her volunteering at the community center when they were teenagers, always surrounded by groups of children who adored her. Yeah. Well, life doesn't always go the way you plan. Something flickered across her face there and gone too quickly to interpret. They fell into an awkward silence. The weight of 2 decades sat between them like an uninvited guest. So much had happened. So much had changed. Robert tried to think of something to say that wouldn't sound completely ridiculous. I can't believe Lisa did this, Katie said suddenly, then laughed. Actually, yes, I can. She's been trying to set me up for months. She made it sound like you were some lonely workaholic who needed to get out more. Robert felt his face heat up. That's not entirely inaccurate. She told me you'd be a good match because we're both too serious for our own good. Katie made air quotes around the phrase. I almost canceled 3 times. Why didn't you? Katie looked down at her wine glass. Because she was right. I am too serious. And I haven't been on a date since my divorce 2 years ago. Seemed like it was time to try. I'm sorry, Robert said. About your divorce, don't be. Best decision I ever made. She said it firmly, like she'd had to convince herself of that fact many times. What about you? Lisa made it sound like you've been married to your company. He couldn't help but smile at that. That's probably fair. There was someone about 3 years ago, investment banker. Brilliant woman. But she got tired of me canceling plans for board meetings and answering emails during dinner. Can't say I blame her. The waiter returned with menus and they both grabbed them like lifelines. Discussing appetizers felt safer than discussing the past. They ordered, made safe small talk about the restaurant, the weather, anything that wasn't personal. But as the evening went on, something shifted. The initial shock wore off and they started to relax. Katie told him about a funny incident at the hospital involving a toddler who'd stuck a crayon up his nose. Robert found himself laughing, really laughing, for the first time in months. He told her about his assistant accidentally sending a company-wide email meant only for him, complete with her complaints about his coffee preferences. Katie nearly snorted wine through her nose, laughing at that. The conversation started flowing more naturally. They carefully avoided certain topics. Neither mentioned their breakup or why they'd lost touch or the what-ifs that surely both of them were thinking. By the time dessert arrived, they'd been talking for over 2 hours. The restaurant had filled up and started emptying out again. Robert couldn't remember the last time he'd enjoyed a conversation this much. Remember Mr. Peterson's chemistry class? Katie asked, her eyes bright with laughter. When you accidentally mixed the wrong chemicals and set off the fire alarm? Robert groaned. I was trying to impress you. You said you liked guys who were smart in science. I said I liked guys who were good at science. There's a difference, Katie was grinning now. The whole school had to evacuate. In the rain. The principal banned me from lab work for a month. You deserved it, Katie said, but she was still smiling. Though I have to admit it was kind of sweet. In a disaster sort of way. They both laughed, and for a moment it felt like no time had passed at all. Like they were 17 again, sitting in the diner after school talking about everything and nothing. But then Robert's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it. An email from his CFO marked urgent. He felt the familiar pull, the instinct to pick it up and respond immediately. You should get that, Katie said quietly. No, it's fine. It can wait. He flipped the phone face down. Robert, it's okay. I understand. Lisa warned me you're always busy. There was something in her tone that made him look up. Understanding, maybe, but also something that looked like disappointment. Or maybe he was reading too much into it. It's a bad habit, he admitted. I'm sorry, don't apologize. You built something incredible. That takes sacrifice. She said it like she understood, but also like she'd heard this story before. From someone else, maybe. Her ex-husband? The waiter brought the check and Robert grabbed it before Katie could even reach for her purse. She didn't fight him on it, which somehow felt significant. Outside the restaurant, they stood on the sidewalk in awkward silence. The night air was cool and Katie wrapped her arms around herself. So? Robert said. So? Katie echoed. This was unexpected. That's putting it mildly. Katie looked up at him, and in the streetlight he could see the girl he'd once known in her face, but also someone new, someone who'd lived a whole life he knew nothing about. Lisa's going to be insufferable about this, you know? Oh, absolutely. She's probably already planning our wedding. Katie laughed, but it was strained. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Right, of course. Robert shoved his hands in his pockets. Can I see you again? The question hung in the air between them. Katie bit her lip, looking uncertain. I don't know if that's a good idea, she said finally. His heart sank. Because of our history? Because of everything. Rob, we're not the same people we were in high school. You're the successful CEO with a company to run. I'm a nurse who works crazy hours and comes home exhausted. Our lives are completely different. Different doesn't mean incompatible, doesn't it? She looked at him seriously. Be honest with yourself. When was the last time you took a full weekend off? When was the last time you did something just for fun? He couldn't answer that. They both knew he couldn't. That's what I thought, Katie said gently. Look, tonight was lovely, really, it was nice catching up. But I think we should leave it at that. Katie, I should go. My shift starts early tomorrow. She was already backing away. Take care of yourself, Rob, really. She turned and walked toward the parking lot before he could say anything else. Robert stood there watching her go, feeling like he'd just lost something important. Again. His phone buzzed. Another email. And another. The company never slept. Robert pulled it out and stared at the screen, feeling the weight of his choices. He went home to his empty penthouse and tried to sleep. He couldn't. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Katie's face. The way she'd laughed at his stories. The way she'd looked at him when his phone buzzed. Like she'd been disappointed but not surprised. The next morning, Lisa called. He let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Finally at noon, he answered. You didn't tell me it was Katie, he said without preamble. I didn't think you'd go if I did, Lisa replied, not sounding sorry at all. How did it go? It went fine. And then she told me she didn't want to see me again. What? Why? Robert walked to his office window, looking out at the city. Because she's right, Lisa, I'm married to my work. What can I offer someone? Canceled plans and distracted conversations? So change, Lisa said simply. It's not that easy, isn't it? Rob, you're the CEO, you make the rules. If you wanted a better work-life balance, you could have one. The company needs a leader who's not burning himself out. It needs someone who can think clearly and make good decisions. How well can you do that when you're exhausted and lonely and working 18-hour days? Robert didn't answer. He'd had this conversation with himself 1,000 times. The answer never changed. She was your first love, Lisa continued, her voice softer now. You never got over her, Rob, not really. I've watched you go through relationship after relationship, and none of them worked because none of them were her. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest with yourself. Why do you think I set this up? I've been friends with Katie for 2 years, and you want to know what I noticed? She never got over you either. Robert's heart skipped. She said that? Not in those words. but I've seen how she reacts when I mention you. How she asks casual questions about how you're doing. She's been hurt, Rob. Her ex was a workaholic who put his career above everything, including her. Sound familiar? The implication stung because it was true. Robert closed his eyes. I don't know how to be different, he admitted quietly. Start by trying. Call her, text her. Show her you're willing to make an effort. After hanging up, Robert stared at his phone for a long time. He pulled up a new message to Katie, typed and deleted a dozen different versions, then finally settled on something simple. I can't stop thinking about last night. Would you give me another chance? He hit send before he could overthink it. Then he waited. An hour passed. 2. His phone stayed silent. He tried to focus on work, but every few minutes he'd check his messages. Nothing. Maybe Lisa was wrong. Maybe Katie had moved on. Maybe he'd waited too long and whatever chance they'd had was gone. His phone buzzed. His heart jumped. Katie, I can't stop thinking about it either. But I need to know you're serious, Rob. I can't be someone's second priority again. I won't. Robert read the message 3 times. Then he typed, You're not. I promise. Let me prove it to you, Katie. How? Good question. How did he prove he was serious? Words were easy. Actions were what mattered. Robert, have dinner with me tomorrow night. And I promise, no phone, no emails, just us. The typing indicator appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Robert held his breath. Katie, okay, one more chance. But Rob, if this doesn't work, we need to just stay friends. I can't do the back and forth. Robert. Understood. I'll pick you up at 7? Katie, I'll drive myself. Let's meet at that Thai place on Maple Street. Casual. Robert smiled at his phone. She was protecting herself, keeping things low-key. Smart. He'd just have to show her she didn't need to. The next 24 hours were the longest of his life. He actually left work at 5, shocking his entire office. His assistant looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Are you feeling okay, Mr. Chen? She asked. I have plans, he said simply. Plans? You never have plans. Should I be worried? Is the company being sold? I have a date, Angela. It's not that shocking. Angela's jaw dropped. A date, you? Since when do you date? Since now, apparently. Hold all my calls after 6. All of them? Even the board? All of them. They can wait until tomorrow. He left Angela, standing there looking stunned. Good. Maybe. It was time people stopped seeing him as just the CEO. Maybe it was time he stopped seeing himself that way too. Robert arrived at the Thai restaurant 10 minutes early. He'd changed clothes 3 times, finally settling on jeans and a casual shirt. He wanted to look like he'd made an effort, but not like he was trying too hard. Katie showed up right at 7. She'd dressed casually too, in jeans and a soft green sweater that made her eyes stand out. She looked nervous. Hi, she said. Hi, you look beautiful, she smiled. You look nervous. Terrified, actually. Good, me too. They went inside and got a table near the back. The restaurant was busy, full of families and couples. It felt real, normal, not like the fancy restaurant where they'd had their first date. This felt like a place where people actually lived their lives, not just performed them. So, Katie said once they'd ordered. No phone? Robert pulled his phone out and turned it completely off. Not on silent, off. Then he set it on the table between them. No phone. Katie looked impressed. Wow, Lisa said you sleep with that thing. Lisa says a lot of things, Monsieur, is she wrong? Robert laughed. No, she's usually right. It's annoying. They started talking and this time it felt easier. They weren't dancing around their past or trying to impress each other. Katie told him about her day at the hospital, about a 6-year-old patient who'd made her a drawing of a dinosaur nurse. Robert found himself fascinated by the way she talked about her work, the genuine care in her voice. You really love what you do, he said. I do. It's exhausting and sometimes heartbreaking, but yeah. I love it. What about you? Do you love your work? Robert thought about that. Did he love it? Or had it just become a habit, something he did because he didn't know how to do anything else? I used to, he admitted. When I was building the company from nothing, when every day was a challenge and a victory. But now, I don't know. Sometimes it feels like I'm just going through the motions. The company practically runs itself at this point. Then why not step back? Hire someone to handle the day-to-day stuff? Because what would I do with myself? Katie looked at him seriously. Live your life, Rob. Travel, pick up a hobby. Learn to cook. Go on dates without checking your phone every 5 minutes. Is that what you want? Someone who knows how to cook? She laughed. I want someone who knows how to be present. Really present. Not physically there, but mentally somewhere else. That's fair. Robert reached across the table and took her hand. She didn't pull away. I want to try, Katie, really try. I know I'm probably going to mess up sometimes, but I want to be better. For me, and maybe for us, Katie squeezed his hand. Okay, but we take this slow, all right? We barely know each other anymore. We need to figure out who we are now, not who we were 20 years ago. Slow works for me. They stayed at the restaurant until closing, talking about everything. Their families, their dreams, their fears. Katie told him about her marriage, about how she'd ignored all the warning signs because she'd wanted so badly for it to work. Robert told her about his last girlfriend, about how he'd realized halfway through that relationship that he was just going through the motions because it was expected of him. Outside the restaurant, Robert walked Katie to her car. The next 6 weeks felt like something out of a dream. Robert and Katie fell into an easy rhythm, seeing each other 2 or 3 times a week when their schedules allowed. Robert actually started leaving work at reasonable hours. His assistant still looked shocked every time he packed up before 7. They went to movies, tried new restaurants, took walks in the park. Simple things that Robert had forgotten people did. Things that made him feel like a normal person instead of just a CEO. Katie made him laugh in ways he'd forgotten were possible. She'd text him photos of ridiculous things she saw during her hospital shifts. A get-well balloon shaped like a dinosaur. A kid's drawing that was supposed to be a doctor but looked more like an alien. Little glimpses into her world that made him smile during boring meetings. But it wasn't all easy. Their schedules were complicated. Katie worked 12-hour shifts that often ran longer. Robert had meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. Calls with international offices at odd hours. They were both used to putting work first, and it showed. One Thursday evening, they'd planned to have dinner at Katie's apartment. She'd promised to attempt cooking, which Robert knew was ambitious. Katie had once admitted that her cooking skills peaked at scrambled eggs. Robert left work at 5:30, feeling proud of himself. He stopped and bought wine and flowers. Real flowers, not the expensive arrangements his assistant usually ordered. Katie had mentioned she liked sunflowers once, so he found a bouquet of those. He was walking to his car when his phone rang. His CFO, David. We have a problem, David said without preamble. The Johnson merger is falling apart. Their CEO just called an emergency meeting for tonight. Robert's stomach dropped. Tonight? Can't it wait until morning? They're threatening to walk. This deal is worth $40 million, Robert. We need you here. Robert stood in the parking garage, flowers in one hand, phone in the other. $40 million, 6 months of negotiations. If this deal fell through, it would affect hundreds of employees, maybe thousands. But Katie, he'd promised. No more canceled plans. Give me an hour, he said finally. I need to make a call. He hung up and immediately dialed Katie. It went to voicemail. Right. She was still at the hospital. He tried again. Still voicemail. Robert sent a text. Something came up at work. Emergency meeting. I'm so sorry. Can we reschedule? He stared at his phone, waiting for a response. Nothing. She was probably with a patient. Another call from David. Robert, they need an answer. Are you coming or not? Robert looked at the sunflowers in his hand. Then he got in his car and drove to the office. The meeting lasted 4 hours. They saved the merger, but Robert barely remembered the details. He kept checking his phone. Katie had finally responded. 3 hours after his message, it's fine. We can reschedule. Just 3 words. No emotion. No, I understand, or good luck with your meeting. Just fine. Robert called her as soon as the meeting ended. It was almost 11 at night. Straight to voicemail. Katie, I'm so sorry. This merger has been in the works for months. I couldn't just walk away. Please call me back. She didn't call that night, or the next morning. When she finally texted back the following afternoon, all she said was, busy week. Talk later. Robert tried to focus on work, but he couldn't. He'd messed up. He knew he'd messed up. This was exactly what she'd been afraid of. Lisa called him that evening. What did you do? How did you know I did something? Because Katie called me crying. She said she knew this would happen, that she was an idiot for thinking you'd changed. Robert felt sick. I had an emergency at work. A $40 million deal was falling apart. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to show up for her, Robert. That's what you were supposed to do. She doesn't care about your $40 million deals. She cares about whether she can count on you. That's not fair, Lisa. I can't just ignore my responsibilities. No one's asking you to. But you can't have it both ways. You can't say Katie's a priority and then drop everything the second work calls. That's exactly what her ex did. After they hung up, Robert sat in his empty office and thought about what Lisa had said. Was she right? Could he have sent David to handle the meeting? Could he have trusted his team to save the merger without him? The honest answer was yes. He probably could have, but he hadn't even considered it. The moment work had called, he defaulted to old habits. He tried calling Katie again, voicemail. He sent a text. Please talk to me. Let me explain. Hours passed. Finally, late that night, his phone rang. I'm listening, Katie said. Her voice was flat, guarded. I messed up. I know I did. But Katie, this merger has been my focus for 6 months. I couldn't just abandon it. I'm not asking you to abandon your work, Rob. I'm asking you to value me as much as you value a business deal, and right now I don't think you can do that. That's not true, isn't it? Be honest. If work calls tomorrow with another emergency, would you drop everything for me? Or would you make me the backup plan again? Robert wanted to say he'd choose her, but they both knew he'd hesitate. And hesitation was an answer in itself. I want to, he said quietly. I want to be the kind of person who'd choose you every time. But I don't know if I know how. Katie was quiet for a long moment. At least you're being honest. That's more than my ex ever was. Does that mean we're done? I don't know. I need some time to think, Rob. This whole thing has brought up a lot of stuff for me. From my marriage. I thought I was past it, but apparently I'm not. How much time? I don't know. A week, 2? I just need space to figure out what I want. They hung up, and Robert felt like he was 17 again, watching Katie drive away to college, not knowing if they'd ever find their way back to each other. The next 2 weeks were torture. Robert threw himself into work because it was the only thing he knew how to do. But for the first time in his career, it didn't help. The numbers on his screen blurred together. Meetings felt pointless. His assistant asked him 3 times if he was feeling okay. Lisa checked in every few days, but she didn't have much news. Katie was working a lot, thinking a lot, but not talking much. Give her time, Lisa advised. She's dealing with her own stuff. Meanwhile, something strange was happening at work. Robert found himself delegating more, trusting his team to handle things he'd always insisted on controlling. David handled client calls. His COO took over some strategic meetings, and the company didn't fall apart. In fact, things ran smoothly. Robert realized something uncomfortable. His team was good. Really good. They didn't actually need him micromanaging every detail. He'd built something that could function without him hovering over it constantly. So why was he still acting like the company would collapse without his constant attention? One evening, Robert was leaving work at 6 when he passed by the hospital. He hadn't meant to. Or maybe he had. He'd been taking this route home lately, even though it was out of his way. On impulse, he parked and went inside. The nurse at the front desk looked up. Can I help you? I'm looking for Katie Morrison. She's a pediatric nurse here. The nurse checked her computer. She's working, but she's with a patient right now. You can wait in the family area if you'd like. Robert almost left. This was probably a bad idea, but something made him stay. He sat in the waiting room surrounded by worried parents and crying children. A little boy with a cast on his arm, a teenage girl holding her stomach, a toddler screaming at impressive volume. This was Katie's world. Chaos and pain and fear, and somehow she chose to be here every day. 20 minutes later, Katie walked down the hallway. She was focused on her tablet, reviewing notes. She hadn't seen him yet. Robert stood up. Katie. She looked up, startled. For a moment, several emotions crossed her face. Surprise, confusion, and something that might have been happiness. Then her professional mask slipped back into place. Rob. What are you doing here? I needed to see you. Can we talk? Katie glanced around. I'm working. I can't just leave. I know. I can wait. How long is your shift? Another 3 hours. Then I'll wait 3 hours. Katie looked at him like she was trying to figure out if he was serious. You're going to sit in a hospital waiting room for 3 hours? If that's what it takes. She shook her head, but he saw the corner of her mouth twitch. Almost a smile. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also serious. About you, about us. I know I messed up, Katie. I know I defaulted to old habits when I should have chosen you. But I want to do better. I need to do better. A doctor called Katie's name from down the hall. She glanced back, torn. I have to go. But Rob, don't wait here. It's depressing and the coffee is terrible. Go home. I'll call you when I'm done. Promise? Promise. Robert went home, but he couldn't settle. He paced his apartment, checking his phone every 5 minutes. What if she didn't call? What if she just said that to get rid of him? At 10:15, his phone rang. I'm done, Katie said. She sounded exhausted. Still want to talk? Always. Can I come pick you up? I have my car. But you could come over, if you want. Robert was out the door before they'd even hung up. Katie's apartment was a small one-bedroom in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing like Robert's sleek penthouse. It was warm and lived in, with photos on the walls and books piled on every surface. A couch that looked comfortable rather than expensive. A throw blanket that was clearly well-loved. Sorry about the mess, Katie said, moving some laundry off the couch. I haven't had much time to clean. It's perfect, Robert said, and he meant it. This felt like a real home. His place felt like a hotel room he'd been living in for 10 years. They sat on the couch, leaving careful space between them. Katie looked at him, waiting. I've been thinking, Robert started, about what you said, about priorities and choices. And you were right. I've been running on autopilot for so long I forgot there was any other way to live. Rob, let me finish, please. He took a breath. When my company was just starting, I worked insane hours because I had to. It was survive or fail, but then we succeeded. We grew, I hired good people, built a strong team, and I should have stepped back. Should have trusted them, but I didn't. I just kept working the same way because I didn't know who I was if I wasn't the CEO who never slept. Katie was listening, really listening. Robert continued. That night I canceled on you, I had a choice. I could have sent David to handle it. He's my CFO, he's brilliant. The merger would have been fine. But I didn't even consider that option. I just automatically said yes to work because that's what I always do. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm trying to change. Really change. Not just say the words, but actually do it. This week I've been delegating more. Trusting my team. Leaving work at reasonable hours. And you know what? The company is fine. Better than fine, actually. Turns out I'd been micromanaging everyone and slowing things down. Katie smiled slightly. I'm glad you're figuring that out. But Rob, you can't change just for me. That never works. I'm not. I'm changing for me. Because I looked at my life and realized I was miserable. I have everything I thought I wanted. Money, success, respect. And I come home to an empty apartment and eat takeout alone and work until I fall asleep at my desk. That's not a life. That's just existing. Katie reached over and took his hand. It's scary, isn't it? Realizing you've been living the wrong life. Terrifying, but also kind of freeing. Robert squeezed her hand. I don't have all the answers, Katie. I'm probably going to mess up again. But I want to try. I want to build a life that's about more than just work. And I want you in it. If you'll have me. Katie looked at their joined hands. I'm scared too. My ex broke my heart because I was never enough for him. His career always came first. And I told myself I'd never do that again. Never be second choice. Katie pulled her hand away and stood up, walking to the window. Robert stayed on the couch, giving her space. Outside, the city lights flickered in the darkness. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. My ex's name was Tom. We got married when I was 25. I thought he was everything I wanted. Ambitious, successful, driven. Sound familiar? She glanced back at Robert with a sad smile. For the first few years, it was good. Or I told myself it was good. But slowly, work became his excuse for everything. Missed anniversaries. Forgotten birthdays. Canceled vacations. And every time I got upset, he'd tell me I was being unreasonable. That he was building our future. That I should support him. Robert felt sick. He'd said similar things to past girlfriends, hadn't he? I believed him, Katie continued. I worked my shifts, came home, kept the house perfect. Convinced myself that once he made partner at his firm, things would get better. But they didn't, they got worse. And then I found out he'd been having an affair with his assistant for 6 months. Katie, I'm so sorry. The worst part wasn't the cheating. It was realizing that I'd wasted 7 years on someone who never really saw me. I was just another item on his to-do list. Wife, check. Someone to come home to, check. But I was never his priority. Never his choice. She turned to face him fully. So when you canceled our dinner for a work meeting, it brought all of that back. The feeling of not being important enough, of always coming second, and I panicked. Robert stood and walked over to her but kept some distance between them. I'm not Tom. I know you're not. That's what makes this so hard. Because I can see you're trying, really trying. But what if trying isn't enough? What if you're just wired to put work first? What if I fall for you and end up right back where I was? What if you don't? Robert countered gently. What if we figure this out together? I'm not asking you to trust me blindly, Katie. I'm asking you to let me prove it. Over time. With actions, not just words. Katie wrapped her arms around herself. I don't know if I can go through that pain again. Then don't. If I mess up, if I start falling back into old patterns, call me on it. Don't let it build up. Don't suffer in silence like you did with Tom. We communicate. We're honest. We figure it out together. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's probably going to be really hard. But isn't it worth trying? Katie looked at him for a long moment. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Robert held her, feeling her shake slightly. Was she crying? He couldn't tell. One condition, Katie said, her voice muffled against his chest. You have to talk to someone. A therapist. About the work stuff. About why you can't let go. I did therapy after my divorce, and it helped. This isn't something you can just willpower your way through. Robert tensed. Therapy felt like admitting defeat somehow. Like saying he was broken. Katie pulled back and looked up at him. I can feel you freaking out. But Rob, there's no shame in getting help. You're dealing with patterns you've built over 20 years. That doesn't just change overnight. Okay, he said finally. I'll find a therapist, promise? Promise. Katie smiled, really smiled for the first time that night. Then I'm willing to try again, slowly, with clear communication, and the understanding that either of us can tap out if this isn't working. Deal. They spent the rest of the night talking, really talking, about their fears, their hopes, their deal breakers. Katie was clear about what she needed. Consistency, presence, someone who showed up. Robert was honest about his struggles. The guilt he felt when he wasn't working. The fear that his company would fail without his constant attention. The identity crisis of figuring out who he was beyond his job title. Around midnight, Robert's phone buzzed. An email from David marked urgent. He glanced at it, then deliberately set the phone face down on the coffee table. Katie noticed. You can check it if you need to. It can wait until morning. Right now, I'm exactly where I want to be. Katie leaned against him and they sat in comfortable silence. It felt like a small victory. A tiny step in the right direction. Over the next month, Robert kept his promises. He found a therapist, Dr. Chen, who specialized in work addiction and anxiety. It was awkward at first, sitting in an office talking about his feelings. But slowly it started to help. You're using work as an avoidance mechanism, Dr. Chen explained during their third session. When you're working, you don't have to think about anything else. Loneliness, fear, uncertainty. Work gives you control in a world that often feels out of control. Robert had never thought about it that way. But it made sense. Work was predictable. Follow the formula, get results. Life and relationships were messy and complicated, so how do I stop? Robert asked. You don't stop working. You learn to tolerate discomfort. You practice being present even when it feels uncomfortable. You build new patterns slowly. It wasn't easy. Robert still had moments where his instinct was to bury himself in work. But now he recognized what he was doing. He'd pause, take a breath, and make a different choice. He started having regular dinners with Katie. Real dinners where he left his phone in the car. They cooked together, which usually ended in disaster but always in laughter. Katie's cooking hadn't improved and Robert discovered he was even worse. How have we both survived to adulthood? Katie asked one night, staring at a smoking pan that had once been supposed to be chicken. Pure luck and the invention of takeout, Robert replied, opening the window to let the smoke out. They ordered pizza and ate it on Katie's living room floor, and Robert couldn't remember the last time he'd been this happy. He also started doing things he hadn't done in years. He joined a gym and actually went. He read books for pleasure instead of just business journals. He took a pottery class on weekends, mostly because Katie mentioned she'd always wanted to try it. He was terrible at pottery, but that was kind of the point. Doing something just for fun, with no goal of being the best or most successful at it. Things with Katie were good. Really good. They still had their challenges. Her schedule was unpredictable. and there were nights when she was too exhausted to do anything but sleep. Robert still had important meetings that couldn't be rescheduled, but they made it work. Then came the charity gala. Robert's company was a major sponsor of the hospital's annual fundraiser. It was a huge event, the kind of thing he normally would have skipped and just sent a check. But Katie was going to be there, representing the pediatric ward, and he wanted to support her. He showed up in his tuxedo, feeling out of place among the doctors and nurses. This was Katie's world, and he was just visiting. She looked stunning in a simple black dress, her hair done up in a way he'd never seen before. "You clean up nice," Robert said, kissing her cheek. "You too, though you look uncomfortable." "I'm fine. Just not used to these kinds of events where I'm not the one giving the speech." Katie laughed. "Welcome to my world. Usually I'm just in the audience applauding for people like you." The evening started well. Robert met Katie's colleagues, heard stories about her work, saw how respected she was in this community. It made him proud, but then things got complicated. Victoria Lang showed up. Victoria ran a competing tech company and had been a thorn in Robert's side for years. She was brilliant, ruthless, and loved making people uncomfortable. "Robert," Victoria said, gliding over with a champagne glass in hand. "Surprised to see you at a hospital fundraiser. Usually you only show up to events where you're the main attraction." "Victoria, always a pleasure. Is it, though?" Victoria's eyes slid to Katie. "And who's this?" "Don't tell me the great Robert Chen has finally found someone willing to put up with his workaholic tendencies." Katie extended her hand. "Katie Morrison. I'm a nurse here. A nurse. How refreshingly ordinary." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tell me, dear, how do you handle dating someone who's married to his company? Do you just accept that you'll always come second?" Katie's smile stayed polite, but Robert saw the tension in her shoulders. "Actually, I find Robert quite present and attentive. For now, perhaps. But give it time. Men like Robert don't change. They just get better at pretending." Victoria turned to Robert. "Isn't that right? How many relationships have you gone through now? 4 or 5? I've lost count." Robert felt his jaw clench. "If you'll excuse us, Victoria." He guided Katie away, but the damage was done. He could feel her withdrawing, even though she was still smiling for the crowd. They made it through dinner, but Katie was quiet. During the speeches, Robert noticed her checking her phone repeatedly. Something was wrong. When they finally stepped outside for fresh air, Katie turned to him. "Be honest with me. What Victoria said, how much of it was true?" "Katie, she's just trying to get under my skin." "Don't listen to her. I'm not asking about her motives. I'm asking if she was right. Am I just another relationship you'll eventually lose interest in when work gets demanding again?" "No, absolutely not. But it has happened before. With other people." Robert couldn't lie. "Yes, but this is different." "You're different, am I? Or am I just telling myself that because I want it to be true?" Before Robert could answer, Katie's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. "I have to take this." She walked a few steps away. Robert watched her body language change. Something was wrong. When she came back, she was already gathering her things. "I have to go. There's an emergency at the hospital. A patient from my ward. I'll drive you." "No, you should stay. This is your event too. Your company's name is all over it." "Katie, I don't care about that. Let me come with you." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but we need to hurry." They drove to the hospital in tense silence. Robert could tell Katie's mind was elsewhere, focused on whatever emergency was waiting. When they arrived, she jumped out of the car before he'd even fully stopped. "Katie, wait, I'll call you later," she said over her shoulder, already running toward the entrance. Robert sat in the parking lot, still in his tuxedo, watching her disappear into the hospital. He felt useless, helpless. This was her world, and there was nothing he could do to help. He went home and tried to sleep, but couldn't. His phone stayed silent. At 3 in the morning, he finally got a text. "Patient is stable. Going to stay here for a while." "Sorry I ran off like that," Robert replied. "Don't apologize. Is there anything I can do?" "No, just needed to tell you I'm okay. Go to sleep." But Robert couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Victoria had said. About Katie's question. Was he really different this time? Or was he just better at pretending? The next morning, still tired, Robert went to the hospital. He brought coffee and breakfast, hoping Katie hadn't eaten. He found her in the family waiting room, still in her dress from the night before, looking exhausted. "Hey." he said softly. Katie looked up, surprised. What are you doing here? Don't you have work? I called in, Robert said, sitting down beside her. Told them I needed the day. Brought you coffee and bagels. Figured you hadn't eaten. Katie stared at him like he'd just told her he could fly. You called in? You never call in. First time for everything. He handed her the coffee. How's your patient? Better, stable. It was touch and go for a while, but she's going to be okay. Katie took a sip of coffee and closed her eyes. This is exactly what I needed. Thank you. They sat in silence for a while. The hospital was starting to wake up around them. Nurses changing shifts, doctors making rounds, families arriving to visit patients. I'm sorry about last night, Katie said finally, about the questions I asked. Victoria got in my head. She's good at that. But Katie, your questions were fair. You deserve to know where you stand. So where do I stand? Robert took her hand. You're the most important person in my life. And I know that's scary because we haven't been together that long and it feels fast. But it's true. When I got your text last night, my first thought wasn't about work or the gala or anything else. It was just worry about you. About whether you were okay. Katie squeezed his hand. That means a lot. But Rob, I need more than words. I need to know that when things get really hard, when work is demanding and I'm exhausted and we're both stressed, you'll still show up. I will. And when I don't, because I'm human and I'll mess up sometimes, I need you to call me on it. Like we agreed. We communicate. We don't let things fester. Deal. Katie leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm too tired to have deep conversations right now. Can we just sit here for a while? As long as you need. They stayed at the hospital for another hour. Then Robert drove Katie home, made sure she got inside safely, and headed to his own apartment. He felt good. Tired, but good. He'd made the right choice, putting Katie first. And the world hadn't ended. His company was fine without him for one day. The next few weeks tested them in new ways. Katie's hospital was understaffed, and she ended up working double shifts multiple times. Robert had a product launch that required intense focus, but they made it work. They'd text throughout the day, quick check-ins. Thinking of you. Can't wait to see you tonight. This meeting is torture. Save me. Small things that kept them connected even when they were apart. One evening, 3 months after they'd started dating, Robert took Katie to the park where they used to hang out in high school. It had changed a lot. New playground equipment, updated paths, better lighting, but the big oak tree where they'd carved their initials was still there. I can't believe this thing is still standing, Katie said, running her hand over the bark. The carved heart was faded but still visible. We were so young. Young and stupid and completely sure we knew everything, Robert agreed. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we'd stayed together? If we'd gone to the same college, stayed in the same city? Robert thought about that. Honestly, I think we would have crashed and burned. We weren't ready. I wasn't ready. I needed to go build my company, prove myself, figure out who I was. And you needed to become who you are, the amazing nurse who saves lives and makes kids smile even on their worst days. Katie smiled. That's a nice way of saying we were too immature to make it work. Maybe. But we're not immature anymore. We've both been through things. We know what we want, what we need, and what do you need, Rob? This, you, a life that's about more than just work. Coming home to someone who makes me laugh and calls me on my nonsense and reminds me that there's more to life than profit margins. Katie turned to face him. That's a pretty good answer. I've been practicing. She laughed and kissed him. It felt easy, natural, like they'd been doing this for years instead of months. I have something to tell you, Katie said, pulling back slightly. I got offered a promotion. Nurse supervisor position, better pay, better hours, more responsibility. Katie, that's amazing. Why do you look nervous about it? Because it means more meetings, more administrative work, less time with patients, and I'm not sure I want that. I became a nurse to help people, not to sit in an office, so don't take it. But it's a huge opportunity. Everyone expects me to say yes, and the money would be really helpful. Robert sat down on the grass, pulling Katie down beside him. Can I give you some advice? From someone who spent 20 years chasing the next promotion, the next milestone, the next big thing. Please, don't take a job just because it looks good on paper. Don't take it because people expect you to, or because it's what you're supposed to want.